Well, hello everyone! Oh, my schedule has been crazy. I am overworked, underslept, and now I'm PO'd at the FDA, so y'all are just gonna have to deal with me. Because that's just what's been going on. I've got so many videos in the past where I've talked about the FDA, and really, if people understood everything about the FDA, then I don't get why there wouldn't be a rebellion. We'd be going over there with torches and pitchforks if we knew everything the FDA had been doing to us. So please check out the channel for that. If nothing else, how badly they handled COVID. But I mean, even before then this is along the same thing. They're going to be regulating something in a way that, well, they're obstructionist. That's what they are. They're obstructionist. And we'll all be worse off as a result. And we've talked before about how just all the delays of medicine costs far more lives than the FDA can claim to have ever saved by that. But this is about something else, something that really isn't even any harm to us. And this is a reason from Ronald Bailey. Let's get into it. So he writes, the Food and Drug Administration has just issued new rules that will significantly slow down the development of new diagnostic tests. The FDA is obstructionist. How many times have I said it? If they knew all of the possible diagnostics and treatments and everything, and how much better our lives would be without all this obstructionism, yeah, torches and pitchforks. That's what people would do. That's how bad it is. And what we're talking about here is laboratory-developed tests, LDTs. They're wanting all of those to be submitted to regulators before the tests can be offered to patients and physicians. So these LDTs are in vitro diagnostic tests, that's basically in a petri dish, for clinical use that are designed, manufactured, and performed by individual laboratories. So these are things that are done in a lab. They take your blood or saliva, urine, whatever. They send it off to a lab. And then the lab is just examining them in test tubes, petri dishes, doing whatever they need to do. And they can diagnose illnesses and guide treatments by detecting relevant biomarkers in saliva, blood, or tissues. They can identify small molecules, proteins, RNA, DNA, cells, and pathogens. For example, some assess the risks of developing Alzheimer's or guide the treatment of breast cancer. So this is all done in a lab. It's nothing invasive after that initial. I mean, I guess the worst case scenario would be a biopsy. That's where they, actually rip off a bit of tissue to be a little unceremonious about it. I mean, it's all done safely, but it's still invasive. But, you get a blood test every year with your labs. Saliva is nothing. Whatever it is, that part's over. Doing these tests, it's not like, some horror movie where they've got you hooked up to these machines and they're doing all these experiments on you. No. It's done in a lab. It'd be a very boring movie because they're just sitting there doing things in petri dishes and whatever. And you're not even there. This is some lab somewhere and you're at home just getting on with your life. So there's no danger to you by doing this. No danger whatsoever. This has nothing to do with keeping you safe. And in fact, until now, the FDA had not sought to exercise regulatory control over the development and deployment of such tests. So why now? Well, hear it from FDA Commissioner Robert M. Califf. LDTs are being used more widely than ever before for use in newborn screening to help protect a person's risk of cancer or aid in diagnosing heart disease and Alzheimer's. The agency cannot stand by while Americans continue to rely on results of these tests without assurance that they work. Yeah, we cannot stand by while these completely safe things are done that give people information. The fiends, how dare they? And when they're talking about assurances that they work, they're not talking about the history of the results of these tests. They're not talking about their reputation. They're not talking about studies that have been done that show that, oh, look, this is what it's good for and this is how well it works. They're not talking about any of that. It has to go through them. Yeah, they have to have approval by the high priests. The high priests have to lay hands on the lab tests and declare them to be holy and pure. That's what this is. It's a religion, man. Absolutely ridiculous. Most of the thousands of current LDTs must be okay, since the new FDA rules grandfather them in, so they're not even worried about them. Yeah, all those that you've been doing, yeah, that's okay, you can keep doing them. Okay. So what's the problem? But now, imposing its new regulations now would result in the risk that laboratories may stop offering safe and effective tests on which patients and the healthcare community currently rely. So they even admit it. They even admit it, and that's the reason why they grandfathered them in. But what about the new ones? Well, as Bailey writes, the unstated flip side of this observation is that the new costs and red tape will almost inevitably result in the development of fewer safe and effective LDTs that would otherwise have been available to future patients and clinicians. Again, obstructionism. And it also smacks of corporatism. And if you're a lab that's been doing this all the time, you can keep doing it. Yeah, they're fine with that. If you're a new lab that's starting up, say, hey, we want to get in on this. We want to create competition. We want to innovate new ways of doing things. Well, you run into this law. No! The high priests have said no! You have to go through us. You have to get our approval before you can innovate, before you can find new ways of helping people. Yeah, because this is capitalism? No. No. There is nothing about our healthcare system that's capitalist, people. Proof right here. Right here. Once again. Capitalism is trying to improve our lives by developing these new tests, and government gets in the way. That's all it ever does, and that's all it ever can do. Laboratory develop, and this is American Clinical Laboratory Association President Susan Van Meter. Laboratory developed testing services are not medical devices, and subjecting them to medical device regulation, because the idea of medical devices is it's something that's hooked up to you, or that's attached to you, or something like a defibrillator or something like that. And that's their excuse for regulating them, because they're actually doing something to you and that could be harmful. That's not these. That's not these. Subjecting them to medical device regulation will harm patient access to needed testing and compromise innovations that drive personalized medicine. The new rule will limit access to scores of critical tests, increase healthcare costs, and undermine innovation in new diagnostics, which is all government involvement in healthcare ever does. Whether it's this kind of crap, or so-called universal health care, or whatever. And it's obstructionist. When it comes to the development of new laboratory tests, it's like that old saying, the most dangerous thing we can do is nothing. Because nothing means that people will continue to get cancer, will continue to get Alzheimer's, will continue to get all these other things they were talking about, breast cancer, and whatever else they were talking about in the story. All sorts of things. All sorts of things they can check. And we want cures for this stuff. We want new treatments for cancer. We want cures and preventatives for Alzheimer's. And how do you do that? This is a big way. Innovating new lab tests to do that. And now, here we are, the FDA, getting right in the way of it. As they always do. As they always ever can do. Seriously, how is this any different from the Mafia? Oh, that's a nice new lab test you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. Yeah, maybe you ought to not do anything until we can give you our protection. You need the say-so of our mob before you can do that. Yeah, because otherwise it'd be a real shame if you started up without us and then someone came here and trashed the place. Yep. When will we learn, people? When will we learn? Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Comic God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. Go to donate.pagosity.tv. All sorts of ways to support. The basic support through PayPal, Venmo, cryptocurrency to do one-time donations. But now the regular support is through Patreon, Subscribestar, and Discord. Discord only lets me do 3 tiers, so I've only got the bottom 3. Maybe they'll let me add a 4th tier later. Only problem with Discord is you can get early access to everything except the podcast. I can't figure out how to do that on Discord because they only allow you to upload things that are 8 megabytes. And the podcast is like 50 or something like that. So I must say, crunch it down. I don't know. If anyone has any ideas, any Discord masters out there who know how to let me get in a large audio file to post in there to everyone, let me know, because I don't want to gyp these people of the early podcasts. So I want to find a way to do that. I'm also kind of looking at YouTube subscriptions. I don't know if there's any demand for it. If you'd like that, please comment below and let me know. But that would also be a way where you could get early videos without ads. So thank you for supporting. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. And until next time, stay strong and be free.